I'm Lani. I'm a naturopathic doctor, as most of you may know, and I'm going to be talking today about foods that heal. So I'm just getting my computer went down. We're just going to bring it back to life. Okay, great. So, and when I say foods that heal, I also mean foods that are going to make you feel healthy. So we're going to talk today a bit about the traditional versus the modern diet and how that's changed, and I think that's a really important subject we need to talk about. We're also going to talk about GMOs, so genetically modified organisms, organic foods, and then what a healthy plate looks like. So let's start from the beginning. I want to talk about traditional foods, and the reason I want to talk about this is because throughout almost all of history, this is what we've been eating. So that includes foods that were cultivated from the land, animals that were local to the area, foods that were traditional to the place you lived and the season you were living in. And if we were out of season, we would do things like canning, preserving, fermenting, curing, drying, and that's how we'd preserve our foods. And this is what we've been doing forever. But just recently, we've changed that and we've gone to more of a modern diet. And with the modern diet, it's funny, I Google searched modern diet and I got a lot of pictures of packaged foods, hamburgers and fries, and it's kind of telling as to what that is. So that's what our modern diet has kind of become: packaged foods, foods that are quick and easy, foods that we don't really even know what they are. We'll read the labels and we don't know half the names of the foods we're eating. And this is a really new thing for us. And it's interesting, what's happened over time is I ask my patients a lot about what their cravings are. And what I find from them is that what they usually say, sugar, fat, and salt are their main cravings. And everyone, it's like this guilty feeling, like, oh, I crave sugar. And the funny thing about it is that that's what we're supposed to be craving. We've been genetically programmed to crave these foods because throughout all of history, these foods have not been an easy thing to come across. And when we did come across them, they were highly revered, and they were consumed because they were quick sources of energy or great storage forms of energy. So sugar, for example, it's a great, you eat it, you get energy right away, so you can go right out and run and do all kinds of things that you need to do. Fat, on the other hand, gets stored, and that can be used later on in times of scarcity or starvation, which again doesn't really happen in our modern society as much. So the reason we're craving these foods is because we're meant to crave them, because they didn't come across our plates as often. But now industry is really capitalizing on this and trying to use this to their advantage because they know that it's something we want. So looking back in history, it wasn't until World War II that chemical agriculture and industrial farming really came into strong practice. And also it wasn't until about the 50s that packaged foods and processed foods really became part of our regular diet. And so it's really recent that all these things have come about. And so it's not surprising that along with that, we haven't had a lot of time to adapt. And what has happened is we are experiencing a lot more chronic diseases because of this, because the foods we're eating aren't the ideal for our biochemistry, what our body needs to do all the great things that it does. And it's kind of crazy, all the amazing processes our bodies do and how much food plays a role in that. The good thing about it is that people now are more interested because, before packaged foods were what we wanted because they were quick, they were easy, they were convenient. But now people are more interested in learning more about their food, which is great because this is something we need to do, and this is a way we need to eat. But the unfortunate thing is there's still a lot of misinformation about how to eat and what healthful eating is, and so I want to demystify some of those things for you. So I want to start by talking now about GMOs, so genetically modified foods. And the reason for this is because it doesn't really receive a lot of press, and I think it's really important because over 90% of the foods that we eat are actually GMO foods, and we don't even know it. And some of the most common foods are corn, soy, sugar beets, papaya, which I was really surprised by. Zucchini is another one. Canola oil, And those are the most common, but it's much wider than that. And you can pretty much bet that if it isn't labeled non-GMO, there's a good chance it is GMO, because foods don't have to be labeled GMO. So there's no way of knowing unless it says non-GMO. So there's a couple, and the problem with eating GMO foods is that we don't really know what they're doing to our body. There have been no human trials on how GMO foods affect our system, but there have been quite a few trials and studies in animals, and most of the research is not very positive. It's linked to like all types of gastrointestinal disorders. There is some link with cancer. There's a whole list of things that are being linked with it, and yet we're not testing them in humans. So it's kind of a worry. So my suggestion is to avoid GMOs whenever possible, because we don't know what they're doing to our body. And a couple ways you can do that. There's a website you can check out, and I'll just say the website right now. It's called non-GMOshoppingguide.com. So you can go to this website and you can get a guide, and it will tell you about all the foods that you can eat that are non-GMO. And then the other thing you can do is buy organic. So whenever you buy organic, you're able to get foods that are non-GMO, because as soon as a food is organic, it has to be non-GMO if it's certified organic. So, and not only is it important to eat organic because you're avoiding the GMO component, but you're also avoiding all the pesticides, fungicides, and herbicides that are found in these foods, and then that are going into our soil, our air, our water, and so it's just permeating our whole system. And the thing about eating non-organic foods is, there's a lot of debate, is it healthier for you, or, all these things. In the end, it's not sprayed with chemicals, so that's pretty important. And, there is the thought that, when a plant is sprayed with a chemical over and over again, and it's, it doesn't have to do its own job of resisting pests and weather and all those things, because all those things are being taken care of by the chemical. The plant itself stops making its own defense. And some of those defense mechanisms that plants make are actually nutritious and nutrients for us. So we're losing some of that aspect of the plants. So eating organic is really important. And a lot of people have trouble eating organic because you can't find everything organic, or it's really expensive. So I've written down a list here. It's the Dirty Dozen, and it comes from a website called ewg.org. So that's the Environmental Working Group. And so they update this list every year, and it's really helpful because they're always adding things to it. They have a Dirty Dozen and a Clean 15. The Dirty Dozen are the 12, actually there's 15 here now, so they've added to it, most highly sprayed foods. So these are the ones, if you're gonna buy organic, definitely buy these organic. And then the Clean 15, which I haven't put up here, but you can find it on the website, are the foods that aren't really sprayed. So they are, they're okay if you can't find them organic. So I'll just go through them with you really quick. So there's apples, bell pepper, blueberries, celery, cucumber, green beans, grapes, kale, lettuce, nectarines, peaches, potatoes, which again, that one kind of surprises me, spinach and strawberries. So these ones, buy them organic whenever you can, really important. Okay, so now that we've talked about things to avoid and things to choose, let's talk a little bit more about our plate and what we should be eating. So I've created here a template called Your Healthy Plate, and I'm gonna fill it in as we go. And so what we have here right now is your plate and what we should have on it. So I've divided it up. So the first thing we want to have are green leafy veg. And this goes for every meal. So green leafy veg, all veg, but green leafy veg I always want to highlight. So that's over 50% of your plate. I would say that's about 60% of your plate. So that's the goal, 60% of your plate, green leafy veg or colorful vegetables. I always tell people to eat the rainbow, and what I mean by that is to get all the colors of the rainbow in your foods, especially your fruits and vegetables. So that includes your purples, your blues, your reds, your orange, your yellow, your greens, all of them. And by doing that, you're going to get all the phytochemicals, so all the nutrients that the plants make that give them their unique colors. And they all give different properties and different healthful benefits to the body. So they all are different antioxidants and do different things. So as long as you're getting all of these different colors, you're ensuring you're getting a very healthful diet. So green leafy vegetables, the first thing. And then the next one is lean protein. So this is in one of the smaller pie spots here. So I would say that's between 20 and 25% of your plate. What I mean by lean protein, I'll give you some examples, would be some grass-fed animal products. So I say grass-fed because that's the traditional way that animals graze, is on grass, not on grain. So they're going to be most healthful when they're eating the foods that they're meant to be eating. So grass-fed, ideally. Wild fish is another one. Eggs, Greek yogurt's a really good source of protein. Beans and nuts and seeds. So those are a few to think about. And then in this other spot here, oh yes, and before I go on, the reason you want to be getting protein with every meal is because it does keep your blood sugar balanced, because it's slowly digested, so it slows things down and gives you energy for longer. And also amino acids, which make up protein, they're what we need to repair our tissue. So by adding proteins to every part of our meal, we're getting those amino acids that will allow us to repair, because we're always repairing damage to our tissue because it's happening all the time. And then so we have starchy veg and whole grains here. So when I say starchy veg, so again, this is another about 1/4 to 20% of the plate. So starchy veg, as I was saying, is you think about potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams, squash, those kind of things, because they do have more sugar to them and more starch, so they don't really go in the category of all the vegetables. These are all the other vegetables. And then your starchy vegetables go here, or your whole grain. So your whole grain would be rice or quinoa, something like that, or sprouted grains, things like that. And when I think about whole grains or starchy veg, so carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, I think of it as sources of energy. So when you eat good quality complex carbohydrates, it's like giving yourself or using clean energy, so like solar power or wind power, where if you eat things like refined grains or packaged foods that are full of just simple sugars that aren't very healthful, it's like eating, or running your body on gasoline or coal. It's just not as clean burning, and you won't feel as well for it. So choosing really good sources of energy are important. And the other great thing about whole grains is they won't raise your blood sugars quickly, so you'll have energy again that will sustain you longer throughout the day. You won't get that high and that low. Okay, and then on the side here, this little droplet, this is your fat. So you want to have healthy fats incorporated into every meal, and fat's really important. We're always, we're in this conflict with fat, because we don't want to eat too much fat. But choosing healthful fats is extremely important, because fats make up the cell membrane of all of our cells, so we need those fats to be there. It's used as storage for energy, of course. And then it's also used, cholesterol specifically, is used to make all the steroid hormones in our body. So that includes what our adrenals make, so cortisol, and then all our sex hormones too. So it's very, very important to get good fat. So I always suggest for people when they're cooking to use things like butter or ghee or coconut oil, because they're saturated fats, so they can withstand the heat. If they're using low heat, then they can use olive oil, because olive oil can't withstand very high heat, because it has, you can think of it, it has like one little kink in it. So when you heat it up, that kink can like move around and change, and it actually can make it very unhealthful. So low heat for olive oil, or no heat. And so no heat, I would choose any like olive oil, maybe flaxseed oil, hemp seed oil. Those are all really good oils. I typically would tell people to stay away from some of the more common vegetable oils like canola oil or safflower oil, because they're very refined typically, so that means they've been really processed, and they're just very unhealthful. And for so long we've been told to cook with vegetable oils, but it's actually not the best thing to do. Okay, and then we have fruit on the side here. So I usually suggest having fruit as a snack a couple times a day. because fruit gets digested really quickly, so it's a quick source of energy. And when you eat it with a meal, it can actually slow down the digestion of everything else. Well, actually, everything else is slowing down the digestion of it, I should say. And it can kind of start to ferment in your digestive system and maybe make you feel a little unwell. So it's good to have a snack, so maybe fruit with some nuts as a snack. It's a good way to do it, 2 fruit a day. And then on the side here, we have your water. So lots of clean, filtered water throughout the day. With your meal specifically, I suggest just a little bit of water maybe a couple sips here and there just to help you get your meal down. But gulping down a lot of water, especially ice water, is not the best thing to do because it actually dampens our digestive fire, which is being stoked by chewing our food and all the enzymes that are being released. And as soon as you drink all this cold water, it kind of puts out that fire and it makes digestion a lot more difficult. So, small sips to help you, get your food down, and then lots of good water in between meals. So that's your healthy plate. And over here, I have a picture of, I don't know how well you can see it, I'll break it down for you. This is my breakfast from the other day, and it's really funny because I made this template. I actually have this, I've made a file of it, but I just redrew it for you, and this picture mirrors it perfectly, so it worked out really well. So on this side here, I have my protein. So I have a soft-boiled egg. I probably would have 2 eggs, but on this day I only had 1. So that would be my protein source, my lean protein. And then I have some sweet potato, some baked sweet potato that I baked in coconut oil, and they were leftovers from the night before, so it was really quick to prepare. And then I have an arugula salad with sunflower shoots, like some sprouts, and then pumpkin seeds, so a little bit more. Sorry guys, one sec. Okay, yeah, so some pumpkin seeds and then some olive oil dressing on that. And then over here I have some cabbage and red onion. So this would be like my vegetable portion up here that I cooked in coconut oil with some umboshi paste. And umboshi paste is a fermented Japanese plum. And it's absolutely delicious. They make it into a paste, and then you can add it to veggies when you're, with a quick stir fry, and it makes it taste so good. So it might be something you want to check out. So that was my breakfast. It makes my mouth water just looking at it because it was so delicious. And so most of you might be thinking, okay, like what's with all the vegetables for breakfast? Like that's not typical. But if you want to get your 6 to 8 vegetables a day, this is what you want to do. You want to have vegetables with every meal of the day. Okay, and so to finish my talk, I wanted to end with a challenge for you. So the first thing I want to suggest is to get back to basics and the traditional way of eating. And one way you can do that is replace one packaged food that you're eating with an actual real food, a whole food. So for example, I'll give you a couple ideas. One example would be say you have a box of crackers that you always eat, take a look at that cracker box and see how many things on there. If there's more than 5 ingredients or 5 to 7 ingredients and you don't know what any of, even just one of them is, I would say get rid of it. Find another type of cracker that has 5 or less ingredients would be ideal, and you should know what each of those ingredients are, or just choose cut up apple to have with, say, your nut butter or your cheese, or carrots and cucumber. So a whole food to have as a snack. If you're having potato chips, instead of potato chips, maybe make some kale chips, and they're actually really easy to make. You just cut up some kale, get rid of the stems, clean it up, put some oil and a little bit of seasoning, salt and pepper even on it, and then cook it at low heat, like 200 for an hour or so, and you'll have a whole head of kale. It'll crisp down to a bowl, and you can eat that, and then you can say you've eaten a whole head of kale, but have your salty, oily craving satisfied. And then the other thing is cook something from scratch. So some resources for doing this would be my website, drlani.ca. So I'm always posting new recipes, and they're all foods cooked from scratch with this template in mind. And another one is nourishingmeals.com. There's so many great recipes on that website. So those would be my 2 suggestions for getting further information on this. So that's my talk. I'm glad you guys were here to listen.